is an inescapable phenomenon that embraces all aspects of human society. It can be observed through the increased interconnection of international business transactions and through the internet, which connects people from different areas of the world. Globalization creates a series of relationships that needs to be regulated by an international organization, because one single nation alone is not able to regulate them. The United Nations was created to regulate relationship among nations and prevent conflicts. However, the United Nations role that should be expanded in reason of globalization, the United Nations didn't evolve in the course of the time. In fact, the organization is the same as it was in 1945 when it was created. For example, the Security Council has the same 5 permanent members that it had in 1945. And undeniably, some of these members are completely different today than they were in 1945. For instance, Russia today is not the same as Soviet Union in 1945, for the better or the worse. Other members that could be included as permanent members of the Security Council, such as India. In 1945, India was a British colony, and today India is the world's largest democracy and one of the most growing economy in the world. Therefore, the United Nations need to be reformed, because the United Nations as an organization was created. It was created on static criteria of governance that didn't evolve. They were not linked to objective criteria that evolved with time. They didn't evolve with the world evolution. So we need the United Nations to reflect the changes that happened in the world in the past 50 years. The United Nations need a reform in the 4 branches: legislative, executive, judicial, and financial branch. Today, we have 18 different specialized agencies in the United Nations system, and each agency has one assembly, one contribution, different contribution that receives from member nations, and different budget. Each agency has a different budget. So basically we have one delegate for each member nation, and this is about 150 to 192 delegates for each specialized agency, and this is over 2,000 delegates for the entire United Nations system. We have also, of course, this creates a huge cost for the international community. At the same time, we have a lack of cooperation and coordination, because there is a fragmentation of the United Nations system, so that there is no organism that can control the entire activity and direct the action of the different specialized agencies and the different international organizations. And also we have a kind of a lack of transparency, because the member country, the taxpayer, with so many different organizations, for instance, the American taxpayer, doesn't know exactly how much of his taxes is earmarked to international organizations, because the international organizations are so many, so different, and this creates a lack of transparency. But United Nations should reflect the member nations. And in member nations, we see that each nation, each democratic nation, has a Congress or Parliament that issue deliberations on every single issue of matters of the government. It is then the executive, the administration that implements such decisions. And if some decision is not, has some technicalities or some technical aspects that need specific professionals, then the Congress can have the help from outside professionals. In the United Nations system today, we have if every single ministry, every single department had its own parliament, had its own separate Congress. And this is why I wrote the word Federalist Manifesto, because I propose to have one budget, one single contribution, and one single General Assembly to the United Nations system, the entire United Nations system. The specialized agencies would assume the legal nature of international departments. Therefore, FAO would become the International Department of Agriculture. The WHO would become the International Department of Health, and the WWF would become the International Department of Environmental Protection. This way, we would have a de facto world government, but not a world government of which conspiracy theorists talk about. A world government that respects the sovereignty of world nations, a world government that reflects the political and economical balances of world nations, a world confederation that deals with issues of international importance that cannot be dealt with by one nation alone. In the American hemisphere, globalization starts with free trade. Because of the imbalances existent between developing countries and developed countries in the American hemisphere, an abatement of borders would cause massive migration from the developing countries to the developed countries. Therefore, the first step toward globalization in our hemisphere is free trade. Currently, we have 5 different free trade areas in the Americas. NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which includes Canada, United States, and Mexico. DR-CAFTA, which is the agreement between Dominican Republic and the Central American countries excluding Mexico. CARICOM, which is the agreement between the small Caribbean islands. The Andean Pact, which is the pact between Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia. And Mercosur, which is the agreement between Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina. These different free trade agreements have had different developments. Some have reached the final stage, like NAFTA, DR-CAFTA, and CARICOM. Basically, they implemented all the provisions so that they were initially provided for. And others, instead, like Mercosur, is developing from the early stages and is still in development. And others, they are stopped at early stages, like the Andean Pact. Also, the results from these free trade agreements are different. And they follow the level of development of the agreement. NAFTA, for instance, has produced considerable benefits to the economies of the country that are members.